need to know our special person has our back. We don't need many special people, but we just need one or two there that we really know that they have our back when life gets wobbly. And an attachment injury shatters that faith. That's why it's so profound.
Welcome to the Psychotherapy Central podcast, where we discuss love, attachment, and healing from trauma. A place where you can gain the knowledge, tools, and wisdom to help you build secure, flourishing relationships. I'm your host, clinical psychotherapist and couples therapist, Jennifer Nurick. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Psychotherapy Central podcast. Today, we have with us a very special guest, Dr. Clare Rosoman. She is a clinical psychologist in Brisbane, Australia. She's an international trainer in EFT and the author of 3 books: An Emotionally Focused Guide to Relationship Loss, Life After Love, co-authored with Dr. Catherine Ream. Secondly, an emotionally focused workbook for relationship loss, healing heartbreak, session by session. And the author of the newly released and very exciting Repairing Attachment Injuries in Close Relationships, an emotionally focused guide to moving beyond betrayal. With over 25 years' experience in public, private, and educational settings, Clare is continually inspired by the power of EFT, grateful to Dr. Sue Johnson for her vision, and is committed to sharing this most amazing model of therapy with the world. Now, I'm lucky enough to have been trained by Clare while studying EFT couple therapy myself, and I have personal experience with repairing an attachment injury that was super helpful in my own marriage. So when I saw that Clare had written a book about repairing attachment injuries, I just knew that I had to invite her on the show. She is a wealth of knowledge in the EFT and couple therapy space, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome her today for this conversation. Welcome, Clare.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's so nice to be here.
It is. And I can see that you've got the book there. So anyone who's watching this on video, you can just see it off to the side.
Yeah.
So I thought we might start with your personal journey into EFT. I'm guessing that you did psychology training first, or maybe you had a vision that you wanted to work with couples. But yeah, how did you kind of get here?
Oh, wow. I always loved models with depth. Like during my early career, I trained in really practical models of therapy like CBT, and I loved them, but it kind of, it felt like I wanted more depth. And I started getting curious about schema therapy and attachment theory and acceptance and commitment therapy. And those models kind of went to the heart of the matter for people. And it was on that journey that I then discovered Sue Johnson's book, Hold Me Tight.
Yeah.
And I read that and just felt like, oh, wow, this is amazing. This is so transformative. It felt like as a model, it really combined all the things I loved in psychotherapy approaches. It had the depth, it had the attachment basis, and it had this beautifully respectful way of seeing distress and dysfunction and coming alongside our clients as fellow humans that just felt so right. And so I started to experiment with seeing a few couples and trying out these ideas. And I just got really inspired seeing the change happen in front of your eyes. So I then did the training and I haven't really looked back since then. I felt like, oh, this is meaty. This is
Mhm.
meaningful. This feels really satisfying.
And did you find that some of the work that you were doing overflowed into your private life, into your own relationship, especially your intimate relationship?
Totally. I feel like that's the extra bang for your buck that you get when you do training in EFT is that after every workshop, you come back way more emotionally accessible, sending clearer, more vulnerable signals to your partner. You start seeing the cycle of distress rather than just being quick to find fault. I feel like that is one of the hidden benefits as a therapist of learning and working with EFT. It's
Mm,
great.
mm, mm. And if there was like something in EFT that you think of as sort of the magic juice or has had the biggest impact in either your life or with your couples or both? What would be the sort of the magic piece or something that, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
That might be a difficult question. Sorry.
It's a great question. It's really making me think. I reckon it's vulnerability.
Mm,
Like, it feels like that's got the magic in it, like two sides of Velcro. Like, you want to bring one person's vulnerability to the surface and have that timed when the other is ready to meet it with their own vulnerability, and you smush it together to build the bond. And so
mm,
I feel like being able to access and tune into my own vulnerability, uh, of course, helps my own relationships. And that gives me a lot of confidence then in shaping those moments with the couples I work with, because I
mm.
can be a more fearless leader. I can say, I know this works, like, come with me.
Yeah.
I felt it, I've experienced it. Like, those emotions that you might feel really scared to go near or scared to let another see. You might find it impossible to believe that you could share this and still be held close. I have that confidence that that will take you somewhere great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there is a beauty, I think, in that couple work where it might be very frightening to share that thing with your partner, but it can feel kind of just safe enough to share it with the therapist when there's that bond with the partner sitting there witnessing. So you know that your partner's going to hear it, but there can be something about, I can say it to you because I feel safe with you. And then it's almost like, I think, kind of almost like sort of breaking it up into
Mm,
smaller chunks in a way, share it with the therapist. And I know that you're listening. Yeah, I think there's
yeah.
something lovely about that, where those moments of vulnerability can sometimes be easier in that triad than in the dyad. Have you noticed that?
Totally, totally. I think that that's part of what is so addictive for therapists in this model is that we get to be the temporary or surrogate attachment figure. We
Yeah,
get to provide that safety for each person in the relationship, and we support them as they take little tentative, brave steps and they try it out with us and the partner's listening. And then we gently give them a little nudge to share that with their partner, and we're holding and slowing and managing the process so they don't end up getting caught in scary patterns of disconnection. We get to shape these new encounters where they experience each other as
yeah,
accessible and responsive and engaged, all those nice secure attachment ingredients.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I can hear your joy at kind of getting in there and slowing the whole process down. And it's such a gift when you do slow it right down and there's those moments of dropping in and that what happens within self and then what happens in the space between. It's yeah, I can feel your engagement with it and love of it.
Yeah,
Mm,
totally. When, yeah, you sort of point to each other's vulnerability and the bond does the work and
yeah,
we shape it, and then we kind of just step back and let people have this little moment of connection. You can feel the healing working. That's what I was hungry for that I wasn't getting in other therapy models. It felt superficial, surface level, cognitive. It didn't feel like experiential, alive change. It didn't feel like you're working with people's natural biology.
yeah, yeah. And what was it that led you to write your most recent book, The Repairing Attachment Injuries in Close Relationships?
It's funny, in thinking about that, like, I love EFT and there's so many great books written on EFT and there's great workbooks for couples on how to step through the process. But I found myself turning to the areas where I couldn't find good, clear guides on. Like, my first foray into writing about EFT topics was relationship loss. And that felt so jarring for me because I'm all about wanting people to stay together. But then I thought, in the sad reality that people can't make it work, or people lose love, they're heartbroken, or they're bereaved. How do we navigate that? How can we use attachment theory and our emotionally focused therapy model to help people navigate loss? So I wrote about the tricky part of the loss of love, and then the next tricky part is broken trust and devastation through betrayal, broken promises. And so I think I just end up going to the tricky corners because they're the places where I have the most questions and can get the most stuck as a therapist. And I want to be able to offer better support to people when their relationships feel like they're in tatters.
And I have to say that as a therapist, when I was looking at the repairing attachment injuries piece, and I was looking through the protocol and sort of what was available online, I actually found it incredibly limited. And I felt like I needed more. And so when I saw this book, I felt like I must have called for that in the inner world. And Claire's just written it for me. So I felt very grateful that you had really picked that up and extrapolated and written such an amazing book with so much detail in it. And I've noticed as well that you wrote it for the layman, that it's for people who are going through it. It's not just for therapists, although I see in the intro that it is for therapists too. And I found it super helpful as a therapist, but that you've written it for people who have these attachment injuries happening.
Yes, I wanted it to speak directly to the people impacted and to really walk them through the process. But that said, that's really hard to do. And I think that in working with lots of couples and relationship therapists, this is where they can feel the most stuck, the most they feel the most weight of responsibility that they so want to be able to help, and the pain that comes up where there's broken trust is usually so acute that therapists can feel easily knocked off balance. So I wrote it speaking directly to partners impacted by betrayal and broken trust, but also acknowledging that many people embark on therapy for help with this because it's really hard to work through by yourself. So I was hoping that the book would support therapists in their work and they could use portions of it between sessions or to support the work they do in session. And then it also could be a guide for quite psychologically minded clients to step through.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, so let's jump into the sort of the content of the book. So, what is an attachment injury? What are the varieties of injuries? Because most people think of an affair, but that actually is not the only attachment injury.
Yes. The definition of an attachment injury is like a perceived abandonment, betrayal, or breach of trust in a critical moment of need. So that can be quite broad, really. I think a betrayal or breach of trust at any time, so breaking a promise, going against an agreement that's been made, that's always shattering to the bond, but also abandonments at times of need really gravely impact the bond. So being left alone when you're particularly vulnerable can create an attachment injury. So what I'm always mindful of is that what might feel like an attachment injury to me might not for the people I'm working with, or something that feels like an attachment injury for them might not for me. So I try to not apply my own bias or definition to it, but more I'm asking them about the attachment significance of this event. And what we see as a key defining feature of an attachment injury is that it redefines the other as unsafe in your eyes. Like if I'm the hurt partner, I will look at the other and think, who are you? I you now look different to me. You look dangerous. I didn't know you were capable of letting me down or betraying me in that way or leaving me alone.
Mm.
So it profoundly impacts the way the hurt partner views the other and views the relationship. And what we see is that hurtful event comes up again and again each time they're in a tight spot. It's like ever prevalent. Like someone becomes really watchful for threats, for more abandonments or more betrayals. So it defines the whole atmosphere of the relationship. In that way, it's like a snap in the trusting bond, like a tear in the fabric that holds the connection together.
I'm really reminded of those arguments, and I know that I've had them, and I'm sure listeners would have had them, where you start off talking about somebody being late or dirty dishes left in the sink. And the next thing you're talking about this thing that happened that is unresolved. Yeah.
Yes.
And it might kind of feel resolved in the other person, or the other person might think, oh, it's not a big deal. But in the person who's been injured, it kind of keeps on resurfacing and resurfacing. Yeah, because it's unprocessed and unfinished and it's just sitting there.
That's right. Yeah. And so it hangs there as a reminder. I kind of see that as wariness, mistrustfulness, anger. It's like the protective part of you is looking out for you by reminding you of that past hurt. It's trying to protect you from future pain. The problem is that everything becomes amplified and sensitized. And so the bond becomes insecure. Those vital questions that Sue outlined in Hold Me Tight of, are you there for me? Will you respond to me? Will you engage with me? They're all no after an attachment injury. Like now you start to question, are you there? Do you care? Can I rely on you? If I signal, will you come? Can I trust you not to hurt me? Do I matter to you? All those important foundational attachment questions start to be wobbly. And sometimes it feels like there are no.
And as you say that, I feel them resonate straight in my heart. It's like those questions to me are so primal. They're so at the core of, am I safe and primal? Yeah, there's a real resonance straight in the heart. Yeah,
Yes, totally. We need the answers to those questions to be yes in order to feel secure.
yeah, yeah,
That's, I think, the most painful part of an attachment injury is that it makes the bond feel insecure. It's like the rug has been ripped out from under you. You're free falling.
yeah. And I've got a quote here from your book, and Bowlby, that's who attachment theory comes from, just for people who are listening. But the quote is, Bowlby was adamant that it's not immature or pathological to need others. Believing this was in fact a biological imperative with adaptive value. And that's what you're really speaking to there.
Exactly. We need to know our special person has our back. We don't need many special people, but we just need one or two there that we really know that they have our back when life gets wobbly. And an attachment injury shatters that faith. That's why it's so profound.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what is the attachment injury resolution model?
Oh, it's an amazing evidence-based model. This is where I'm so grateful to Sue and her research colleagues for creating and testing these models so that it supports us as clinicians. We know that we have a process that we can work through to help people repair and achieve reconciliation and forgiveness to restore security in the bond. So the attachment injury resolution model has three phases. First of all, it's about stabilizing the bond. Often people get very entangled in this cycle of wariness and defensiveness. And so the hurt partner keeps saying, ow, 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 you hurt me. How can I trust you again? In various ways. They signal this ouch signal. And the hurtful partner will often try and make it right. They may apologize, try to say the right things, try and address it, or and only to have that not really land, or they might get defensive and try and explain and defend their good name, try and offer some alternative from the awful thoughts that the hurt person is having, like you're just unreliable, you're not trustworthy. So the hurtful one tries to defend, to explain, and sometimes gets really fed up and just dismisses, says, you're going to have to get over it. I can't say anymore. Or they just shut right down, or they push back and say, you're not so great yourself, you know. And all of these are totally understandable reactions, but it doesn't resolve the hurt. So people get caught in this self-defeating cycle where whenever that injury surfaces, they get caught, and no matter what they do, it makes it worse. They don't get to heal. So the first part of attachment injury resolution is to identify and track that cycle. And we want to help people exit that cycle. And that creates a sense of stability then. Then in the actual healing part, we need to dig for that beautiful vulnerability. And usually, hurt partners are very afraid to risk being vulnerable. They've experienced being dropped. So they're usually very afraid. So we need to take a time and help draw out the vulnerability and help them share that and take that to the other when the other can hold it non-defensively. So it requires the hurtful partner to be really vulnerable too and take in that pain. And that's hard. It takes time to get to this place where we can do the healing. But we have this process for helping the hurt partner take their pain vulnerably and the hurtful one to hold it and take that in and reach back with some corrective message. And then we help the hurt partner ask for comfort and reassurance. And we help the hurtful one offer that. And maybe even ask for their own needs, if that makes sense. So we have this process for stepping through the healing. And what that does is it creates antidote bonding events where the hurt one can now reach vulnerably and the hurtful one can be accessible, responsive, and engaged. All the things they weren't during the injury. And what that does is when repeated and when deeply felt and deeply incorporated, it rebuilds the attachment security.
Mm.
Takes time to get there though.
Mm. So, how do you create the context for healing to even begin that part of the work?
Yeah, that is a big, big part. As I was writing the book, I was so aware that we have this evidence-based model, the attachment injury resolution model, at our fingertips for facilitating healing and repair. But in my clinical experience and that of the therapists I have worked with and commiserated with, so many therapists say just how hard it is to get to that place. Like once we get there, we have this beautiful model for repair. But what is way harder, I think, is creating the safety and stability to get there. So I spend a lot of time in the book looking at creating a context for change. And what that starts with is, first of all, understanding the nature of the attachment injury. So, like, there are four key types of attachment injuries. Um, the obvious one is emotional and sexual betrayal. So that's where there are broken promises around emotional and sexual exclusivity, whether that's in a monogamous or a non-monogamous relationship. These agreements and promises have been broken. But then I also identified another category of violated boundaries. So this is violations of agreements, but more around honesty, trust, secrecy. Like this sort of injury centers around secrecy and its consequences, like lying by omission, hiding a major health concern and not telling the other, um, being made redundant and not telling your partner and going off to work each day ostensibly. Um, it could be hiding a health concern. Uh, it
Mm.
also can involve decision making that doesn't include the other, like tampering with contraception. Yeah, and
Yeah.
the other doesn't have a say in that. So these violated boundaries, I think, are really important. Then there's also abandonment at a time of need. We know that abandonments are particularly meaningful when the abandoned person is vulnerable, like when they're facing a health challenge or around pregnancy and childbirth. That's a time of such vulnerability, often unpredicted vulnerability. And we can't know quite how vulnerable we're going to feel until we're in this massive transition or facing something huge like a health crisis. The greater the vulnerability, the greater the need for the other one. So if they're not there, it's going to really have more of an impact on the bond.
Mm.
Then the fourth category that I outlined was threatening the safety or livelihood of the relationship. So these are injuries that threaten the physical safety between partners, like threats of violence, um, but also things that threaten their shared life, like one person engaging in really risky behaviors that could lead to them losing their job, or risky sexual behaviors that could lead to an STI being brought home to the partner, uh, gambling away the livelihood, the all the life savings. So there's sort of four broad categories of different types of attachment injuries. Uh, I know I haven't got to how we create the context for change, but I just wondered if you had any thoughts about those four categories before we dive in.
Yeah, I love um, the how broad that is, that it really takes into consideration all the different types, because I think that most people, when they think of attachment injury, they're thinking about an affair,
Yeah.
but it's about really stressing that it's about the bond. And that piece, abandonment in time of need, I mentioned at the beginning of the session that I worked through one in my own EFT couple therapy with my beautiful husband. And I had a particular thing that had come up around the birth of my second child. And I'd gone and done my own therapy around that particular thing, and lots of different modalities over the years, different things. But there was something about addressing that issue with him, in with my therapist, with our therapist, our particular EFT couple therapist,
Yeah.
that really allowed it to resolve inside my system to the point where it never comes up again. It's just kind of done. But what I was really aware of is when I felt the pain of what had happened through my lens, and remembering always holding that through my husband's lens, it might have been quite different. But there'd been a limit. I'd felt that he'd been able to, if you think about emotion kind of dropping down, I had been able to drop right down into the emotion of what had happened for me. And it was a very traumatic birth. My second, actually, both of them were, but the second one especially. He was able, in my experience, and he's going to listen to this with great love in my heart. I talk about my beautiful husband. My feeling was, and he'd probably agree with me, that he was able to kind of come halfway down with me, but then something would block him from coming all the way down with me. And it would be maybe his perspective of, oh, that wasn't quite my experience of it, Jen. Is that true, in inverted commas?
Yes.
Um, Maybe a little bit of shame sitting under there of, oh, maybe I should have been a bit different, or maybe I could have done better, or I wasn't the best version of myself. And so in his system, there could possibly have been, and I'm just guessing, and I'm very happy for him to correct me when he listens to this, yeah, little things that were kind of blocking him being able to really drop down. And in the space with the therapist, she was really able to hold me and let me really drop down. And he was then free to kind of go there with me and not in some way pull me out, or block that, or, well, I'm sorry that happened, or I'm sorry that was your experience. And because there were 99 really great things that he did, totally.
Mm.
But it was just that little one. And it doesn't mean that, from my perspective, that he's a bad person or a bad husband but there was a rupture there where I felt abandoned. And those words are exactly it: abandonment in time of need. I needed you there with me 100%, and you
Yeah.
weren't. You were 50%, 80% somewhere else.
Yes.
Um, yeah, that was, so my experience was that there was something alchemical that I couldn't do alone, that with him there, when he could drop to a place inside of himself where he could feel my pain without having to defend himself, and where he could kind of hold my hand. I can't remember what was said, but there was, the energy of it was, I really feel how I let you down in several different spots there. And I'm really sorry about that. I wish I could do it differently.
Mm.
There was like this whole settling in my system and a reconnection and trust in him. Interestingly, it's like this reforming of trust. Okay, now you can see it. Now I can really trust that you wouldn't do that again in the same situation, and that maybe I could be better at asking for what I was really needing, because there were pieces in there where I could maybe have been much clearer. And I do think that if I'd have been able to be clear and said, this is what I actually need from you, that probably he could have stepped forward and done it.
Yes.
But I was in a vulnerable state, and
Mm.
probably didn't know what I really, really needed. So
Yeah.
yeah, but there was something about that, him, I can see it, I can feel it, and I'm sorry, and I wish it had been different, that reignites that trust in what I know of him, that he will be there for me.
Oh, that is just so beautiful. And that is so true. I've heard so many people say that until they see their pain really register in the other's eyes, that they really get it, that it hurts them to know that they hurt me, then I can't fully trust that it won't happen again. But when I see them visibly grapple with it, grapple with knowing that they were hurtful, even if it wasn't their intent, but knowing that their impact was hurtful, that is so hard. And when the hurt one sees their partner grapple with it and see that they're really bothered, knowing that they cause pain, and they reach with genuine remorse like that, that's the magic. That's vulnerability meeting vulnerability. As you said, it's like he held your hand in that moment. You were in that pain together rather than separate. Like that's the antidote to the aloneness. That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah, it was very powerful. And from that, I knew for sure, having studied a lot of individual style therapies and being, I have my own therapy regularly and finding a lot of benefit from it. That's when I knew that there was a piece in the couple work that
Yeah.
was undeniable and very powerful and was able to resolve things that I think are possibly, I hesitate to say unresolvable alone. I hesitate to say that, but that was my experience. I hadn't been able to resolve it alone, and I needed to do it
Yes.
in a relationship.
That is so true. And
Mhm.
most hurt people try and heal alone. And it makes perfect sense because your faith in the other's dependability and reliability and sensitivity has been wobbled, sometimes shattered. And so it makes perfect sense why you try and cope alone. And the sad part of that is that hurt that born in relationship needs to be healed in relationship. And you can't do it on your own. You can try really hard, but you just can't. And so it ends up that there's like wind rushing between two hurting people when that hurt can't be healed, when they're trying to manage it on their own.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful, powerful process.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So we were talking about the context for healing to sort of begin the work, and a big section of the book is getting stability there.
Yes.
If you were to if each person sort of needs to do certain things in order to be able to create that container where you can start to open up the old wound and dig out the infection,
Yeah.
what's the role of each person?
Yeah, that is something that I have found really helpful to be really clear with people on what's required to create a holding container to do this work. Throughout the book, I use a broken bone analogy, which is very similar to what you just said about cleaning out the infection. I think gory wounds are really great analogies for this level body blow hurt to your relationship. So I think of our work in leading up to this beautiful moment that you described that you and your husband had, the healing part. We have to do uh, a fair bit of groundwork to get there. And if you think about a broken bone, even like a broken bone where a bit's popping out through the skin, like a really gory break, if you present to the emergency room, the very first thing they're going to do is put you in the x-ray machine and clean out that wound and explore the wound. And so I see that as our very first task in helping people repair from an attachment injury. We first need to assess the damage. And that I think is important for informed consent. Like often people need to assess how deep does this wound go? What actually happened? are there other facets to this betrayal? And often it comes out in a drip-fed way, not because someone's deliberately withholding necessarily, but because it's very hard to talk about. Emotions run really high. There's often a lot of shame. And so I think of the very first assessment period as exploring the wound. Like, what are we dealing with? Do we have it in us to repair? Uh, are we both up for it? Like, I need to know that both partners are committed to the relationship and that they have an idea of what would be expected of them in order to repair it so they can make a really empowered, informed decision to dig in. So that's the first part, is assessing the damage. The second part is what will happen with a broken limb like that is we've got to stabilize it. We've got to splint it or put a cast on it, because or else you're going to keep walking around on it. So I see the very next part of our work as looking at the cycle they get caught in around this topic. Each person's defensive and protective moves will be like stamping on the broken bone, and it creates hurt and fear and shame in the other, and they get caught in this cycle like an infinity loop. So our next part is really getting to know that cycle that's blocking the healing, the stamping around on the broken bone. And we've got to stabilize that limb. There are several jobs that each partner can do to contribute to that, which is like the cast around the bone. And so what I say for hurtful partners is that if they can demonstrate commitment to the relationship through their actions, that's going to be a really positive signal to the other of how important this is, how cherished the other is. Often their word is not enough. If there's been any secrecy and concealment, then just their word kind of won't land with the other because they're mistrustful. So this is where their actions will really be so powerful. So we want to see them prioritize the other, prioritize the relationship, uh, really get involved, inquire how the other is, do as much as they can to show that they're prioritizing the relationship and their partner's pain in this time. The next job is transparency. So, especially if there's been secrecy and hiding, they need to be transparent in all the places they were secretive. So, if there were devices involved, email, then leave it open on your computer, share the password to your phone. This is hard because what it rubs up against is our natural human need for appropriate privacy versus secrecy. And what I find is when there's been an attachment injury, normal privacy that we all deserve feels like secrecy because the hurt person is now hypervigilant. So this has to be a short-term solution. Like if you left a splint or a cast on a broken bone for 4 years, your limb would be completely useless, muscles wasted. So this is a short-term strategy, this level of transparency. Again, it's because actions speak louder than words. And the more that's voluntarily given by the hurtful partner, the shorter term it will need to be. It cannot be a long-term strategy. I can't say that enough because it would be very unhealthy.
Yeah.
And then
But
the
oh,
third,
sorry.
yeah. Then the third job for the hurtful partner is witnessing the pain. And I want to really validate for people that this is the hardest thing of all. When you know you've been hurtful, intentionally or not intentionally, it's so hard to witness the pain you've had a hand in. And so I tell people right from the outset that I'm going to help them with that. It's really hard, and no one expects them to be able to do that naturally and easily. It hurts because it matters so much. The fact that it's agony to see your partner hurting because of your actions, that's unbearable. And it's unbearable because you care. And that's the ingredient we need to be able to do the work. So they're the three practical tasks I can give the hurtful partner to help them feel a little less helpless as we're creating a context for healing. But I just want to give you a moment to add anything to that before I sail on.
No, it's yeah, it's interesting. I feel a lot of compassion actually for the hurtful partner. Um, because that task can be so confronting, and because often so much shame sits in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes coming to terms with what they've done. Sometimes my sense is like they haven't really fully integrated. It's like it impacts their own model of self.
Yes.
And through that process, they might think of themselves as I'm a genuinely a good person, but then sitting in this room facing my partner's pain,
Mm.
in my model of self is starting to change. Well, actually, maybe I'm not such a good person as I thought I was. Or
Mm.
and that's huge for that person to be integrating as that emotional holding of their partner is happening in an ideal world.
Yes.
It's a lot. It's really is a lot.
Yeah. And then it makes sense why partners can stay defensive and try to defend their good name. It makes a lot of sense because confronting the fact that you have made a mistake and you've caused damage is really hard, but it also couldn't have higher stakes. Like for a lot of people, their whole relationship hangs in the balance when there's an attachment injury. And to sit with the knowledge that you've caused pain and you could be entirely rejected because of it, that's terrifying. No
Yeah.
wonder people want to defend and say, but I'm not that bad person.
And it as we're talking about it that even that languaging, I'm not a bad person, I'm a good person. I'm aware of those younger parts, and
Mm.
often younger parts that through societal growing up and bad girl, good girl, and the shaming that happens growing up for many, many people, that those parts can get super triggered by, oh, I'm a bad person. And it can be very core, can really trigger core parts and that whole, yeah, who am I model of self. And yeah, just aware of that, the younger parts that can be there in the process.
Totally. We're so vulnerable when we fear that we're going to be rejected, that maybe we've done too much damage to be able to repair this.
Yeah.
It's really hard. And that's why it takes time to get to that place where a hurtful partner can witness the other's pain non-defensively, like your husband was able to do. That takes time to get there. So, this early part of the process where we stabilize the limb is really helping us work with each person's defensiveness and their protest. Like, how could you? And, but why can't you just hear? Like, that the protest, the defense, they just bump up against each other. And it's like you're stamping on the broken bone.
Yeah.
So, by giving people jobs to focus on that are going to stabilize the limb and tracking that pattern and exiting the pattern with the help of the therapist is very helpful for just stabilizing it.
Yeah.
But I do have some jobs for the hurt partner as well.
Yeah. Let's hear them. Yeah.
The first one is owning your reactivity. This one I think is really important because when someone's hurt, they're going to protest that. And the more it matters, the more they're going to protest, the louder they're going to get. But being hurt doesn't give you permission to be abusive. And that's one of the sad things that I see in hurt people is that they can really lash out and they can be quite vicious and they feel justified and they're protecting themselves. And I see it like a dog that's been run over and you go to pick it up and it bites. It's not normally like that, but it's just hurting and it's protecting. So I get the spirit of the protest, but I always say to hurt partners, that I want to validate the anger, validate the protest. This was not fair. This was not right. It wasn't okay. But I want you to express that in ways that are constructive to the rebuilding of the bond, not destructive to the bond. And so that's one key task for hurt partners is to really ask themselves, do I want to punish? And do I want vengeance? Or do I want to repair this? And if you want to repair it, the way you express your very adaptive and understandable anger is different from how you express the anger if you want vengeance. So that's one hard question for hurt partners to really reflect on. The
Mm.
second one that's really hard too is managing information. So I find hurt partners, when there's been secrecy, they want to know all the answers, which is totally reasonable. They want to know. They don't want anything hidden from them again. They've experienced being blindsided by what they didn't know. So now they want to leave no stone unturned, explore every corner. And I just caution them that that's not always helpful. Because for some people that I've worked with, they have uncovered details that burn themselves into their brain and are still eating away at them 2, 3 years later. So I just want to caution them that they need to know enough that they feel like they're no longer in the dark, but not so much that they're traumatized. And so I just caution them to ask a few questions and then take that information away and just really let it settle and see how they feel after before they ask more. Because you can get onto a sort of trajectory where you can obsessively seek details, and before you know it, you're down the rabbit hole and now you can't take back. So that's a tricky one that cannot be managed by the hurtful person. Because if they gatekeep information, it will feel like more betrayal. It can only be managed by the hurt one, but I just urge them to have caution there. It's tricky.
And that's where I think doing it with a therapist can be helpful because there can be a checking in for
Yeah.
the hurt party. Let's just take a pause here. Right,
Yeah.
let's just let that land. How is that piece of information landing? Because often, especially where, because this is traumatic, right? We often with it, and whenever there's a trauma, it's kind of we're speeding things up. We can want to know everything, and I don't feel safe. And if I know everything, I'll feel safe. But actually, what you're saying is you might know everything, and the result be that you feel more unsafe. And so, with that
Yes.
line, and that can be super hard for either person who's in it
Yeah.
to get a gauge of where that line is, and just the support and holding of a therapist can be really helpful in that piece.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. And it's someone else managing and slowing the process, which is easier. It's less of a load on the two people involved that are hurting, that are triggered, that the
Yeah.
wound is being poked. Like, whew.
Yeah.
And then the third job for the hurt partner is to have an open heart, even just a little. And the reason I say this is because when you've been hurt, it's totally understandable that you close your heart off to the other. In fact, that's quite characteristic of an attachment injury, that when we've been really badly hurt, we often reach like an existential decision point of, I'm never going to let you in again. I'm never going to be that vulnerable to you again. It's like this circling the wagons. And that's understandable. But the problem is, if you're not able to open your heart a tiny bit, then you won't be able to be impacted by your partner and you won't be able to let them in. So, no matter what they say or do, if your heart is closed, it'll just bounce off. So this process to heal actually does require just a little bit of an open heart, a willingness to share more vulnerably, a willingness to take in and hear the other, a willingness to perhaps change your mind about the other. Because your self-protection will tell you a really negative story about the other. Will list all the reasons why it's a good idea to keep your heart firmly closed, but that won't help you heal. So that's another hard task for the hurt partner, but it is necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you do when it's quite a complex injury where both are hurt?
Oh, that's even harder, isn't it? That's kind of heartbreaking. I In the book I looked at 4 different ways that there can be complexity. Sometimes there's a dual injury where both people are hurt. Sometimes what I've seen too is there can be an eclipsing injury where there's one more recent hurt that is huge, blows up the relationship, takes up all the room, and a previous hurt that has maybe lingered there unaddressed doesn't get any airtime, or maybe a smaller hurt that pre-existed just gets no focus. So there can be the two there. It's just that one takes up all the room.
Mm.
Another way that I've seen hurts become really complex is when there's a retaliation injury. So when one's hurt and then the other one lashes out and does something just as bad, and then we've got two hurts. Then a fourth way that it can be complex is where there's an accumulation. of hurts. And these may be compounding lots of really awful things, or they can be lots and lots of smaller hurts, maybe things that don't fully rupture the bond, but have a cumulative effect. And so you can feel overwhelmed with, where do we even start? There's so much hurt here. So when we have complexity in any of those ways, I think this is where it's so helpful to have a therapist as the steerer of the ship. And sometimes we have to list the hurts and go through them one by one in
Yeah.
order of priority. And what that might mean is that when we focus on one hurt, one partner is the hurt one and the other is hurtful. And then when we focus on the next one, we actually swap roles. I think that if we put it all out there that we are going to address each of these big hurts and you're going to each take turns sharing pain and holding the other's pain and making repair, I think it can help. Like if I'm hurt, but I've also been hurtful, I feel like I can hang in there for that process better. Like I can be there and repair with my partner if I know my hurt is also going to have some tending as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's so human.
Mm,
In your experience, when there's multiple hurts like that, if you were just to kind of throw out in your experience, do couples recover from that in your experience? Do you put it at a 50-50? Given, and I'm assuming in some intensive therapeutic work, I'm thinking
yeah.
like once or twice a week, you're going to doing couple work and you both committed to you want the relationship to work. Let's just say there's kids involved and you
Yeah.
want the relationship to work. Yeah, what's the
I think the more complex the hurt, the more time, the
yeah,
more hurt and trauma in each person's background, the more time it's going to take. The more we have to go slow to work deeply. But in a way, there's pros and cons. If you've got a solid foundation and then you've had one attachment injury, it's easier to repair it because you've got a good foundation. But it's lopsided, as in one feels like they have to work harder to do the repair. Where if there's two hurts, in a way that it feels more fair, like I think it buffers against the collapse into shame. Like if we've both hurt each other and we're both going to get our time to repair, in a way, we're both risking. So it's hard to say because I feel like each relationship is so unique. I also do want to say here that it's okay if people decide that they just can't trust, that they just can't repair. Because sometimes in these more complex hurts, or when there's been an accumulation, or the hurt has just been too savage, sometimes people can't. They just can't live with the risk of being hurt like that again. Like, and it's sometimes it's just asking too much to ask their nervous system to live with that knowledge. So I want to be with people if they do make the very sad decision that too much water has gone under the bridge and they just can't open themselves up again.
yeah. And is there a specific process that you take people through around that separation?
Yeah, I feel like this is where EFT really shines as a model. I mean, we know that it's APA gold standard for improving relationship satisfaction and building security and loving bonds. But all those same skills actually are so helpful when people arrive at this very sad place of needing to reconfigure or redefine or separate their relationship. The reason it's so powerful, I think, is because we can slow the process. We can help people speak from the heart. We can help right wrongs, correct misunderstandings. We can help them more lovingly and consciously separate so that there's more of a sense of peace and closure. I, Most often, I think when people separate or redefine their relationship, they're still in each other's orbit in some way, shape, or form. So the more we can help them have resolution and healing where they can and honor what they've meant to each other, honor the story of their relationship, have a coherent and shared narrative around the ending of that, then the better that is for everyone moving forward.
Absolutely. And I've worked with a lot of people at the end of a relationship solo, where there's a lot of kind of guessing, or maybe this was happening for the other person, or maybe that was happening for the other person. And I've had moments of really wishing for them, oh, I wish there could be a finishing EFT style piece where some of that can get cleared up, because otherwise our tendency, I think, is that we make up stories. And sometimes
Mm.
those stories could be completely accurate, but sometimes, and having worked with lots of couples, that sometimes we're completely off the mark. And it can be so helpful, just in terms of the psychological imprint that is left at the end internally as we move into the next relationship. You can just have a much clearer chalkboard rather than having all that kind of squiggly writing left, that some of it we've just made up, maybe even based on past hurts or even childhood stories, that are just not accurate.
So true. So true. And that's where I think working through an attachment injury helps you grow, whether you're able to repair and reconnect or whether you end up moving on from this relationship to a new chapter. The emotional labor actually helps you grow. Growth can come from suffering.
Yeah. And this is a beautiful point. Another quote that I pulled out of your book was, I can't guarantee that it will save your relationship, and I can't say that it will be easy, but I can promise you that you'll grow from the process.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know that broken bone analogy, the repair of actual broken bones lines up so beautifully with this. Like when you described what you and your husband worked through, it's like the splint was there. And we know that if we align the two ends of a broken bone, they just need to be aligned and in proximity to each other. And the little osteoblasts send out little feelers and connect. And around it is this protective calcium envelope. And to me, that's the goodwill piece of we're committed, we're going to heal from this. There's like this protective envelope. And within that, when vulnerability meets vulnerability, the bond regrows, just like the bone regrows. And that calcium envelope hardens into a callus that leaves the bone actually stronger in the broken place. And I feel like that's what you described, that you and your husband doing that repair work, it left you stronger in the broken place. You were clearer about your needs and gentle with yourself for why you found it hard to ask.
Mm.
And and he was more empowered to be able to be an active part of the repair.
Absolutely. And in that piece of work, because once I'd done one, I was like, well, I have two others that I'd like to bring. So there were actually three, from different stages in our relationship. And what I noticed after that piece of couple work we did together, um, was this new feeling in our marriage. And I joked with him. I said, you know what? I think that maybe this is my second marriage. And so we have this joke that we're in our second marriage, although it's to the same person. It's like, I still want to be with you and you're my person. But the marriage feels different after we did that. And I read this lovely piece, from Esther Perel on Instagram the other day. She said, I've been married for 40 years and I've been married 3 times, all to the same man. I thought,
Oh,
how funny is that? Because I'd been joking with some of our relatives, and I think they thought, Jenna, is Jenna, are they okay in their marriage? Because we were joking, oh, we're on our second marriage. It's great. It's not as stressful as the first marriage, much easier. And
yeah.
yeah, this idea that you can have, and especially when any of those little attachment pieces that are sitting there, when we get to really, the bone is healed. I with my clients, I use the analogy of a wound with an infection in it, and we're going in to kind of clear up that infection. It comes out. It's like, instead of healing with a little bit of a lump on it, and it kind of maybe a little bit of pus coming out here and there,
Yep.
you've gone in, you've really cleaned it out, and it's really there's no more infection left in there, and it's got to heal in a flat way. It allows this different foundation in the relationship, which you can build off of in a different way.
Totally. It's stronger in the broken place. For having
Mhm.
weathered that damage, it's actually stronger. And I see each time you process a hurt, or you revisit that old hurt, or a reminder comes up and you can turn in new ways. I see that as like the physio for the limb that just keeps building the strength more and more and more.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great place to land in that out of the it reminds me of that the Japanese pottery that can be, what's it called? I can't remember
Kintsugi.
that's it. Yeah, that where the break is, it can be actually a beautiful part of the fabric of the new creation and the new container. And that's
Yeah.
definitely been my experience from actually receiving and doing that work in my own relationship. So for people
Mm.
who are listening, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh my goodness, I can think of at least 5 of these attachment injuries that I would love to take into couple work, that I would love to have Clare's book. I'm just going to say the name of the book again, and maybe you could hold it up as I say it just for people on YouTube. It's the Repairing Attachment Injuries in Close Relationships, an emotionally focused guide to moving beyond betrayal. You can buy it online from multiple places. It is a invaluable piece of work, an addition, I think, to the work that is available in EFT. Invaluable, I think, for therapists. I'm referring to it in my client work. I'm very, very grateful. If you have enjoyed this interview, you can reach Clare. One of the places is Instagram. She has these amazing infographics that she creates that I've sent to clients at different times. I've been like, oh, this is the outline of the piece where you are, or this is something that could be helpful. So I've actually sent them to clients before, but go on and have a look at her work. It's for Instagram, at Clare Rosoman. And for EFT therapy for clients, jump onto www.attachmentbrisbane.com.au. And I'm assuming that there's a group of therapists that you have working there that people can reach out to.
Yes, yeah.
Do
Thank
you
you
want
so
to?
much. It's been so lovely chatting with you.
You too. I think it's just a very, very rich podcast there. Lots of valuable information. And for people who want to go deeper, grab the book, reach out to you, and reach out to one of the people at your clinic. And yeah, allowing that injury to become gold, to become the strongest part of your relationship. There's a gift there.
Yeah, so well said.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
And wherever you're joining and listening today, we hope that you are doing well, and much love to you. Bye. Thank you for joining me on this episode. If you want to learn more about all things love, attachment, and trauma, I'd love to connect with you on Instagram at psychotherapy.central or visit my website at psychotherapycentral.health. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd greatly appreciate it if you could leave a review and a 5-star rating. Your support means a lot, and I look forward to connecting with you again soon.